Hello everybody, welcome along to this video. Mr. Johnson teaches Macbeth Act 3 Scene 1, part of my whole series of videos revising and recapping every single scene from the play. We're now firmly towards the middle of the play. We've had Macbeth and Lady Macbeth being given predictions of the future and then planning to murder the king, the murder of the king, and now we're on to the aftermath and the results of the murder of the king, which we find in Act 3. So this is obviously part of my series of videos recapping and revising all of the scenes in the play, so check out some of those videos as well. And yeah, this is part of your English Literature GCSE, and this is Paper 1, Section A. So let's move on then. A summary of this scene then. Banquo worries at the start of it that Macbeth may have murdered Duncan, and he then goes off riding with Fleance before there's a big banquet sort of in memory of the king. Macbeth worries about Banquo going to give him away because Banquo was there and heard the witch's predictions, so Macbeth hires murderers to kill Banquo and Fleance. Key characters in this scene then, you're going to see Macbeth and Lady Macbeth, Banquo at the beginning, and then later on there are two murderers present in this scene as well, and that quite literally is the titles that are given to those parts, the murderers. So let's go for it then, working our way through it. We start off in Macbeth's palace. We're in Forest now rather than in Inverness, so we've had a bit of a shift of scene. In comes Banquo talking to Macbeth, and he says, "Thou hast it now, King, Cawdor, Glamis, all, as the weird women promised." And then here's a quotable line for you. "I fear thou playedst most foully for it. I fear that you did bad things to get it," essentially is what he's saying there. And he's basically revealing, as I've put on the arrow, his suspicions about how Macbeth became king. But then he goes on line 5. "I shall be the root and father of many kings. So if there come truth from them," meaning the witches, "as upon thee, Macbeth, like you have, their speeches shine." So actually, the witches predicted great things for his children, is what I've summarised it there. And he actually can see that maybe there's good things there as well. And that is more or less it, the conversation there. Off goes Banquo in a moment, and tonight Macbeth says we're going to hold a solemn supper, again for the memory of the king who has recently been murdered. And basically Macbeth says on line 21, "Are you going riding this afternoon?" "Aye, my good lord," says Banquo, "yes I am. We would like your good advice basically on some matters," is what Macbeth says, "but we'll do that tomorrow. Is it far you're going riding?" And Banquo replies, "As far as my lord as will fill up the time betwixt this and supper." So basically, the time between now and when we eat is when I'm going riding. "Fail not my feast," says Macbeth at the bottom, and Banquo replies, "I will not." And then he continues the conversation. "We hear our bloody cousins are bestowed in England and Ireland, not confessing their cruel parricide. The king's sons, I've said there, have fled, and they're not confessing to the crime of murdering their father." He goes on to talk a little bit about that, but then Macbeth at the end of that speech, my second arrow, just adds on this little tag question, "Goes Fleance with you?" So that really reveals his intentions to us. Don't forget, the witches made the predictions that Banquo's children will become kings. So that includes Fleance and Fleance's children and those children. So if Macbeth can kill them, he actually breaks the witches' predictions and could remain king. He's worried about not remaining king now. Macbeth wishes him the best, and off it goes Banquo. Macbeth then says to everyone else present, "Go make yourself, do what you want with your time." And then it's Macbeth left on stage, and basically he says, those men. Macbeth spots some men in the distance and asks the attendants, so like a servant if you like, who they are, what they're doing. They're waiting at outside the palace gate, and Macbeth says, "Bring them before us." And then he has a soliloquy while we're waiting for those people to be brought away from the gate. And that's a very quotable line at the top, which is why I've put it in pink. "To be thus is nothing, but to be safely thus." And as I've translated there, to be king is nothing. I need to be safely king. He doesn't feel safe. He feels like he's become king, but the way he's done it means he's at risk of being found out. And that risk in this sense is Banquo. And he goes on to say that our fears in Banquo stick deep. Like, I'm really worried about Banquo. He goes on to describe how Banquo, on line 55 there, the dauntless temper of his mind, he hath a wisdom that doth guide his valour. Banquo is too virtuous. That means he's too good, too nice, and he's going to give him away. That's what Macbeth worries about. Macbeth goes on to give other examples of people who who are like this in this situation. On line 60, Macbeth gets really angry there. He chid the sisters, like asked. He chid the sisters when they first put the name of king upon me, and bade them speak to him. Then prophet like they hailed him, the father to a line of kings. So that arrow I put there. Macbeth is angry that Banquo questioned the witches, and they revealed his sons would be king. He almost believes perhaps that if Banquo hadn't asked, then they never would have known, and Macbeth wouldn't be worried. But because Banquo had to go and ask, Macbeth now feels angry at him. And then I've highlighted these bits of imagery in yellow for you. Upon my head they placed a fruitless crown, and put a barren sceptre in my gripe. So crown and sceptre. Crown being what you wear on your head as a king or queen, sceptre being something you hold in your hand, but it's fruitless and barren. And I put there, imagery is associated with emptiness, but also a lack of children you use those sorts of phrases for as well. So sort of a bit of a double meaning going on there, but essentially Macbeth does not feel happy with what he has now. He feels that there's a risk he's going to lose it, which is why it feels empty to him. He can't enjoy it. He goes on to say, for Banquo's issue, now by issue he means children, so for Banquo's children have I filed my mind, for them the gracious Duncan I have murdered. So he's saying there with the arrow, I have polluted my mind just so Banquo's children could become kings. What was the point of that? Put rancors in the vessel of my peace. This line is quite a good one. A mine eternal jewel given to the common enemy of man. I've disrupted my nature, I've disrupted my sleep, I've sort of sold myself to evil, just for Banquo's children to become kings. He goes on to say that at the end of his bit of speech there, to make them the kings, the seed of Banquo, by which he means his children, his seeds. He gets really angry, and then in come the murderers, and that's where Macbeth says at the very bottom there, was it not yesterday we spoke together? It was, so please your highness, says the first murderer then. And now I've translated what Macbeth goes on to say there. Macbeth is making the murderers believe that Banquo has ruined their lives. That's why I put there, know that it was he in the times past which held you under fortune, so much in bad luck. He basically sort of manipulates and twists situations to try and make the murderers believe that they need to murder Banquo. So it's very manipulative of Macbeth, which sort of mirrors what his wife was doing earlier on, playing that manipulation. You'll see more of that in just a second, in fact, as well. I haven't translated much more of the rest of it, because essentially that's what he's doing, manipulating them. Murderer replies there, we are men, my liege. And then this is a real moment of twisted manipulation, which really mirrors, I put there, Lady Macbeth's in Act 1, Scene 7, when she emasculated him and said, when you durst do it, then you are a man. Macbeth says there in yellow, in the catalogue ye go for men, as hounds and greyhounds, mongrels and spaniels, and curs, and he gives a whole list of things are all names of dogs. So yes, you may be a man, but you're not necessarily a very good man, just like everything which is called a dog doesn't make it a good dog, is what he's comparing. We've got then more manipulation before we get to the bottom, when he says basically Banquo's death will make us all feel better. And then again at the top of this page, look, you know that Banquo is your enemy. Again, more twisting. And then he goes down in the middle there, which I've got my second arrow. He basically says, I could kill Banquo myself, but we've got friends in common. I don't want to upset those friends, so I'll have to let you do it and pretend that I'm mourning him so as not to upset his friends. More manipulation, just making them believe he could do it, doesn't want to appear weak, but he better not do it. He'll let you do it, which is, again, deep manipulation. He says later on at the top there, I'll tell you where the murder must happen and where to plant yourselves, as in where to be. He also mentions in the middle of that big chunk there that Fleance his son that keeps his company, whose absence is no less material to me than his father's, must embrace the fate of that dark hour. His Fleance's son, who's going to be with him, I quite like him to be dead as well, and he must embrace the fate of that dark hour. He must be ready to die as well. The murderers say, we are resolved, my lord. And then we've got a final rhyming couplet again, as I've labelled at the bottom there, once again echoing the idea of the way the witches talk, as we often see with Macbeth at the end of scenes. Key themes here then, we've got manipulation going on there, as we talked about with Macbeth manipulating the witches, but also that deception duplicity, Macbeth appearing to be Banquo's best friend to his face, and then right after he leaves, preparing to have him murdered and have his son murdered as well. This is becoming really quite dark and really quite properly evil. The murder of the king is absolutely appalling, but to then have the murder of your best friend who you fought with in battle and his child, that really does show how low Macbeth is going. some quick revision questions for you, as I always do here. So pause this slide and use those questions just to write them down, your answers, and then respond to them to see how much you've understood of this scene. All of those answers can be found from things we've talked about in the video here. And then just write a final picture, really, the fruitless crown. So we've got a metaphor going on here, like the tree which bears fruit. Well, the tree being the crown, but the fact that it's like having it with no fruit. It doesn't give you what you want from it. And that's what Macbeth is trying to do with the imagery and that metaphor of the fruitless crown. So there you go, that's the first scene in Act 3 done. More scenes to follow, some very key scenes, setting up towards the middle and end of play. I wish you the best of luck when it comes to writing about this play in your exams, and thank you very much for watching this video, and don't forget to check out my other videos all about the key scenes to help you revise Macbeth. Thank you very much, and goodbye.